The rain didn't just fall in Seattle that night. It hammered against the glass like a warning. Inside the empty diner, the phone rang, a sharp, shrill scream in the silence. It wasn't a customer ordering takeout. It was a lifeline. On the other end was a 6-year-old boy whispering in the dark, hiding from the monsters in his own home. When Cassidy Brooks picked up that receiver, she didn't know she was answering a call that would tear her life apart. She didn't know the boy's father was Ethan Caldwell, a man with more money than God and a heart colder than the grave. She was just trying to help. But in a world ruled by power, even kindness has a price tag, and Cassidy was about to find out exactly how much she was worth. The neon sign of Jerry's 24-hour diner buzzed with an irritating hum, a failing red light that flickered like a dying heartbeat against the wet pavement of 4th Avenue. Inside, the air smelled of stale coffee, grease, and the lemon-scented bleach Cassidy Brooks had just used to scrub the counter for the 3rd time that night. It was 2:15 a.m. The graveyard shift. Cassidy wiped her forehead with the back of her hand, pushing away a stray lock of damp blonde hair. She was 23, but tonight she felt 50. Her feet throbbed in her worn-out sneakers, and the ache in her lower back was a constant reminder of the double shifts she'd been pulling to pay for her mother's insulin. The diner was empty, save for old man Henderson snoring softly in the corner booth, nursing a cold cup of decaf. She sighed, tossing the rag into the sanitizer bucket. She reached for her own phone to check the time, but the landline on the wall behind the counter rang first. It was jarring. Nobody called the diner at 2 a.m. unless it was a wrong number or a drunk looking for a taxi. Cassidy hesitated, then picked up the greasy receiver. Jerry's Diner. Kitchen's closed, but we've got pie and coffee. Silence. Hello? Cassidy asked, her patience already thin. If this is a prank, I'm hanging up. Don't hang up, a voice whispered. It wasn't a drunk. It wasn't a prankster. It was a child. The voice was tiny, trembling, and wet with tears. Cassidy's posture stiffened. She pressed the phone tighter to her ear. Hey there. Who is this? I'm hiding, the boy whispered. Please don't hang up. It's dark. Cassidy's heart skipped a beat. She looked around the empty diner, her maternal instincts kicking into overdrive. I'm not going to hang up, honey. I'm right here. My name is Cass. What's your name? A sniffle. Noah. Okay, Noah. That's a nice name, Cassidy said, keeping her voice soft and steady, the way she used to talk to her little brother before he passed. Where are you hiding? Are you safe? In the closet, Noah breathed. The big one in the guest room. I can hear them yelling downstairs. Daddy is throwing things again. Domestic disturbance. Cassidy's stomach turned. She grabbed a pen and a napkin. Okay, Noah. You're doing a great job being brave. Can you tell me where you live? I can get someone to come help you. No. The panic in the boy's voice was sharp. No police. Daddy said if the police come, he'll send me away. He said I'm bad luck. Cassidy closed her eyes, a surge of anger rising in her chest. What kind of father told his child that? Okay. No police. Just me. I'm just listening. Why did you call this number, Noah? I just pressed buttons, he admitted, his voice hitching. I wanted my mommy, but mommy's in heaven, and you answered. Cassidy felt a lump form in her throat. She leaned her hip against the counter, turning her back to the empty room. I'm glad I answered, Noah. You aren't alone. I'm going to stay on the line with you until you feel safe, okay? Okay, he whispered. Can you tell me a story? Cassidy blinked back tears. A story? Sure. What kind of story do you like? About a wolf, Noah said. A brave wolf. For the next 40 minutes, Cassidy ignored her cleaning duties. She ignored the buzzing neon sign. She stood by the wall phone, weaving a tale about a little wolf named Scout, who was lost in the woods, but found his way home by following the moon. She listened as Noah's breathing slowed, as the terror in his voice replaced with sleepy curiosity. And then, Cassidy said softly, Scout realized he wasn't alone. The forest was his friend. I wish I had a friend, Noah murmured, his voice slurring with sleep. You have me, Cassidy said. I'm your friend, Noah. Suddenly there was a noise on the other end of the line, the sound of a heavy door slamming open. Noah! A deep, thunderous voice boomed through the receiver. It didn't sound like a concerned parent. It sounded like an earthquake. Daddy! Noah gasped, the fear returning instantly. Who are you talking to? The man demanded. There was a rustling sound, a small cry of protest, and then the phone was snatched away. Cassidy gripped the counter. Hello? Listen. Don't you dare hurt him. Who is this? The man's voice was ice-cold, authoritative, and terrifyingly calm. It wasn't the slur of a drunk. It was the sharp, clipped tone of a man used to giving orders that were instantly obeyed. Why are you talking to my son at 3 a.m? He called me, Cassidy snapped, her fear overridden by defensiveness for the boy. He was scared. He said you were throwing things. If you touch him, I swear to God I'll call the cops myself. There was a pause on the other end, a heavy, loaded silence. You have no idea who you are speaking to, the man said, his voice dropping an octave. Do not call this number again. The line went dead. Cassidy stood there, holding the receiver, the dial tone buzzing in her ear like a warning. She slammed the phone back onto the cradle, her hands shaking. She didn't know who that man was, but she knew one thing. That little boy was in trouble, and she had just lost her only connection to him. The next 2 days were a blur of anxiety. Cassidy couldn't focus. Every time the diner phone rang, she jumped, hoping it was Noah, but it was always just suppliers or takeout orders. She replayed the conversation in her head 1,000 times. Daddy said I'm bad luck. The words haunted her. She tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just a tantrum. Maybe the father was just stressed. But the coldness in that man's voice didn't sound like stress. It sounded like indifference. On Thursday night, the rain had turned into a torrential downpour. The diner was busier than usual with people seeking shelter. Cassidy was balancing 3 plates of burgers on her arm when the bell above the door jingled. The atmosphere in the diner changed instantly. The chatter died down. Heads turned. Walking through the door were 2 men in black suits, wearing earpieces. They scanned the room with professional detachment before stepping aside to hold the door open. A 3rd man entered. He was tall, well over 6 feet, wearing a charcoal grey suit that cost more than the diner building itself. He had dark hair slicked back, sharp cheekbones, and eyes the color of steel. He didn't look like he belonged in a place that served bottomless coffee for $2. He looked like he owned the city block. It was him. Cassidy didn't need an introduction. She recognized the vibration of the air around him, the same cold authority she had heard on the phone. Ethan Caldwell. Cassidy had seen his face on the news, usually in the business section or the tabloids. He was the CEO of Caldwell Enterprises, a ruthless billionaire known for hostile takeovers and an icy demeanor. He was a widower, and rumors swirled that he had driven his wife to an early grave with his neglect. Cassidy froze near table 4, the burgers heavy on her arm. He found me. Ethan scanned the room, his gaze sweeping over the truck drivers and the weary students until it landed on Cassidy. He didn't blink. He walked straight toward her, his polished shoes clicking on the linoleum floor. The 2 bodyguards flanked him, creating a wall between him and the rest of the patrons. "Table for 1!" Cassidy managed to choke out, trying to keep her bravado. Ethan stopped 2 feet away from her. Up close, he was devastatingly handsome, but in the way a storm is beautiful. dangerous and destructive. "You're the woman from the phone." It wasn't a question. Cassidy set the plates down on the nearest table, ignoring the confused customer. She wiped her hands on her apron and crossed her arms. "And you're the father who scares his own kid." The bodyguard on the left took a step forward, his hand twitching toward his jacket, but Ethan held up a hand to stop him. He stared at Cassidy, his eyes narrowing slightly, as if analyzing a complex equation. "My son?" Ethan said, his voice low and devoid of emotion. "Has not spoken a word since Tuesday night. He refuses to eat. He refuses to leave his room. The only thing he says is, 'Cass.'" Cassidy's heart clenched. "Is he okay?" "He is difficult," Ethan corrected. "I traced the call to this establishment. I expected a scam artist or a journalist trying to get a scoop. Instead, I find—" He looked her up and down, his lip curling slightly in distaste. "A waitress." "I'm a waitress who listened when you didn't," Cassidy fired back, her temper flaring. She knew she should be scared. This man could crush her like a bug. But the thought of Noah crying in that closet gave her courage. "If you're here to threaten me, save your breath. I haven't told anyone who he is." "I'm not here to threaten you, Miss Brooks," Ethan said, pulling a file from the inside of his jacket. He knew her name. Of course he did. "I'm here to make a transaction. I'm not for sale." "Everyone is for sale," Ethan countered smoothly. "I need my son to eat. He says he will only eat if the story lady is there. I have nannies with master's degrees in child psychology who cannot get him to open his mouth. Yet, he talks to you." He tossed the file onto the sticky table. It slid open, revealing a contract. "I am offering you a job," Ethan said. "You will come to the Caldwell estate. You will look after Noah. You will get him to eat and behave." Cassidy laughed, a harsh, incredulous sound. "You think I'm going to work for you? You're a monster." "I am a billionaire," Ethan corrected, "and I am offering you $10,000 a week." The diner went silent. Even old man Henderson stopped snoring. $10,000 a week. That was enough to pay for her mother's insulin for a year. It was enough to fix the leak in their roof. It was enough to get them out of debt. Cassidy looked at the contract, then back at Ethan's cold, unyielding face. "I can't be bought. Your mother's medical bills are 30 days past due," Ethan said, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "The foreclosure notice on your apartment was sent yesterday. You are drowning, Cassidy. I am throwing you a raft. Not for your sake, but for my son's." Cassidy felt the blood drain from her face. He had investigated her. He knew everything. "You're despicable," she whispered. "I am efficient," Ethan replied. He pulled a gold fountain pen from his pocket and placed it on the contract. "Noah is waiting. You have 5 minutes to decide, or I walk out that door and you never hear from us again. And Noah stays in that room, alone." It was a trap, a beautiful, golden trap. Cassidy looked at the diner, at the grease stains, at her life of endless struggle. Then she thought of the little voice whispering about wolves in the dark. She picked up the pen. "I'm not doing this for the money," she said, her voice shaking as she signed her name. Ethan picked up the contract, verifying the signature. For a second, something flickered in his eyes. Not triumph, but something akin to relief, quickly buried. "Be outside in 2 minutes," he said, turning his back on her. "The car is waiting." The drive to the Caldwell estate was a study in suffocating silence. Cassidy sat on the plush leather seat of the Mercedes Maybach, her hands folded tightly in her lap to stop them from trembling. Across from her, Ethan Caldwell typed furiously on a tablet, the blue light illuminating the sharp angles of his face. He hadn't said a word since they left the diner. He treated her presence like he treated the rain against the window, an unavoidable nuisance. Cassidy looked down at her clothes, a grease-stained diner uniform, ripped jeans and sneakers that had seen better days. The interior of the car smelled of expensive leather and sandalwood. She felt like a muddy footprint on a white carpet. "We are approaching the gates," the driver announced, his voice muffled by the partition. Ethan finally looked up. He locked the tablet and slid it into his briefcase. "A few ground rules before we enter, Miss Brooks." "Cassidy," she corrected instinctively. "Miss Brooks," Ethan repeated, his tone brooking no argument. "First, you are not a guest. You are staff. You do not address me unless spoken to in front of other staff members. Second, the west wing of the house is strictly off-limits. That is my private residence. Third, and most importantly, do not fill the boy's head with fantasies. Your job is to make him functional, not happy. I need him to eat, sleep, and attend his tutoring sessions without hysterics. Do I make myself clear?" Cassidy felt a flare of heat in her chest. "Functional? He's a 6-year-old boy, Mr. Caldwell, not a broken toaster." Ethan's eyes narrowed, the temperature in the car seeming to drop 10 degrees. "He is a Caldwell. He has responsibilities. Weakness is not a luxury we can afford." The car slowed as massive iron gates swung open, revealing a winding driveway lined with ancient oaks. At the top of the hill stood the house, or rather, the fortress. It was a sprawling, modern mansion of glass, steel, and dark stone, jutting out from the cliffside like a jagged tooth. It didn't look like a home. It looked like a corporate headquarters designed to intimidate. As the car came to a halt under the portico, a team of staff was already waiting. A severe-looking woman with graying hair pulled back into a tight bun stepped forward. She wore a pristine black suit that made Cassidy feel even grubbier. "This is Mrs. Higgins, the house manager," Ethan said, stepping out of the car and buttoning his jacket. "Mrs. Higgins, show Miss Brooks to the nursery. Get her changed. Burn those clothes." "Yes, sir," Mrs. Higgins said, her eyes raking over Cassidy with undisguised judgment. Cassidy scrambled out of the car, clutching her worn backpack. "I can wash my own clothes, thanks." Ethan didn't answer. He was already walking up the steps, checking his watch. "I will be in my study. Do not disturb me." He disappeared into the cavernous foyer, leaving Cassidy alone with the housekeeper. "Follow me," Mrs. Higgins said crisply, "and try not to touch the walls." The interior of the house was breathtakingly cold. White marble floors, abstract art that looked like violent slashes of paint, and towering ceilings that echoed every footstep. There were no family photos, no toys, no signs of life. They ascended a floating staircase to the second floor. Mrs. Higgins led her down a long hallway to a heavy oak door. "He is in there," Mrs. Higgins whispered, her voice losing some of its edge. "He hasn't come out since yesterday. He threw a porcelain vase at the last nanny." Cassidy took a deep breath. She wasn't afraid of a 6-year-old. She opened the door. The room was massive, filled with expensive toys that looked like they had never been touched. In the center of the room was a tent made of bed sheets draped over 2 chairs. It was the only chaotic, messy thing in the entire house. "Noah?" Cassidy whispered. The sheet rustled. A small, pale face peeked out from the darkness of the makeshift fort. His eyes were red-rimmed, his dark hair messy. When he saw her, his eyes went wide. "Cass?" he croaked. "Hey, Wolfie!" Cassidy smiled, dropping to her knees so she was at his eye level. "I told you I was your friend." "Friends show up." Noah scrambled out of the fort. He was wearing silk pajamas that looked too big for his thin frame. He didn't run to her. He hesitated, as if expecting her to disappear. Cassidy opened her arms. That was all it took. Noah launched himself at her, burying his face in her neck, sobbing. He smelled of baby shampoo and fear. "You came," he cried. "Daddy said you wouldn't. He said everyone leaves." Cassidy held him tighter, glaring at the empty doorway where Ethan had vanished. "Well, your daddy was wrong. I'm not going anywhere." For the next hour, Cassidy worked a miracle. She didn't force him to do anything. She just sat on the floor with him. She ordered a grilled cheese sandwich from the kitchen, ignoring Mrs. Higgins's protest that Master Noah only ate organic steamed vegetables, and they had a picnic inside the sheet fort. For the first time in days, Noah ate. He laughed at Cassidy's impression of a grumpy bear. The color returned to his cheeks, but the peace didn't last. Around 7 p.m., the door opened. Ethan stood there, still in his suit, holding a glass of amber liquid. He looked at the sheet fort, then at the crumbs on the floor, and finally at Cassidy, who was wearing one of the spare staff uniforms Mrs. Higgins had provided, a stiff black dress with a white collar. "What is this mess?" Ethan asked, his voice cutting through the laughter like a knife. Noah instantly froze. The light died in his eyes. He shrank back behind Cassidy. Cassidy stood up, positioning herself between the boy and his father. "We're playing, Mr. Caldwell. It's called camping." "It's called a pigsty," Ethan countered, walking into the room. He kicked a pillow aside. "Noah, get up. Your tutor is arriving in 20 minutes. You have a math assessment." "He's 6, Cassidy said, her voice rising. "It's 7 o'clock at night. He needs rest, not math." "He needs discipline," Ethan snapped. He looked at his son, his expression unreadable. "Noah, stand up. Stop hiding behind the help." Noah trembled, tears welling up again. "I don't want to do math, Daddy. I want to hear the wolf story." Ethan's jaw tightened. He took a step forward, looming over them. "You will do as you are told. Life does not care about what you want. The sooner you learn that, the better." He reached out to grab Noah's arm, not violently, but firmly. "Don't," Cassidy warned, placing her hand on Ethan's forearm. The contact was electric. Ethan froze. He looked down at her hand on his sleeve, then up at her face. His eyes were a storm of repressed anger and something else. Shock. No one touched Ethan Caldwell. No one dared. "Remove your hand," he whispered dangerously. "Let him stay," Cassidy pleaded, not backing down. "Look at him. He's exhausted. If you force him now, he'll hate it. He'll hate you." The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Ethan stared at her, his steel-grey eyes boring into hers. For a moment, Cassidy thought he might fire her on the spot. Instead, he pulled his arm away, smoothing his suit jacket. "Fine," he said, his voice clipped. "He can skip the tutor tonight. But tomorrow, the schedule resumes. And if I see this room in this state again, you will be scrubbing the floors of the entire estate with a toothbrush." He turned and walked out, slamming the door behind him. Cassidy let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She turned to Noah, who was looking at her with awe. "You shouted at Daddy," Noah whispered, and he listened. "I didn't shout," Cassidy said, her hand still shaking slightly. "I just negotiated." But as she tucked Noah into bed that night, Cassidy couldn't shake the feeling of Ethan's skin under her fingers. It was hard, tense, like a coiled spring. And for a split second, she had seen the man behind the billionaire. He wasn't just angry, he was terrified. The Caldwell estate was different at night. During the day, it was a cold museum. At night, it was a labyrinth of shadows. Cassidy couldn't sleep. The guest room adjacent to the nursery was luxurious. The bed was softer than anything she had ever slept on, but the silence of the house was unnerving. It was too quiet. No sirens, no neighbors arguing, just the oppressive stillness of wealth. It was 2 a.m. Her throat was parched. She decided to brave the hallway to find the kitchen. She tiptoed out of her room, the marble floor cool against her bare feet. The hallway was dimly lit by recessed lighting that cast long, eerie shadows. She navigated the grand staircase and found the kitchen, a stainless steel cavern that looked more like a laboratory than a place where food was made. She found a glass and filled it from the tap, leaning against the counter. She thought about her mum. She had texted her earlier to say she got a job for a rich family and would wire the money soon. She didn't mention the billionaire, or the fear, or the strange, broken little boy. As she made her way back upstairs, a sound stopped her. It was music, a piano. It was coming from the West Wing, the forbidden area. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, a slow, melancholic piece that sounded like weeping turned into sound. Cassidy knew she should turn back. Ethan had been explicit, strictly off limits. But curiosity was a dangerous thing. And the music, it sounded so lonely. Cassidy followed the sound. She passed the invisible boundary line where the carpet changed from beige to a deep crimson. The West Wing was older than the rest of the house, the architecture more Gothic, the shadows deeper. The music was coming from behind a set of double doors at the end of the hall. One of the doors was slightly ajar. Cassidy crept closer. She told herself she just wanted to see who was playing. Was it Mrs. Higgins? A ghost? She peeked through the crack. The room was a library, lined floor to ceiling with books. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting a flickering orange glow across the room. In the center sat a grand piano. Ethan was playing. He had discarded his jacket and tie. His white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the top, sleeves rolled up to reveal muscular forearms. He wasn't playing with the stiff precision of a businessman. He was playing with raw, unbridled emotion. His head was bowed, his eyes closed, his fingers moving across the keys with a desperate tenderness. On top of the piano sat a large, framed photograph. Cassidy squinted to see it. It was a woman, beautiful, with cascading dark hair and a smile that lit up the room. She was holding a baby. Ethan stopped playing abruptly. He slammed his hands down on the keys, creating a jarring, discordant crash that echoed through the room. He grabbed a crystal tumbler of whiskey from the piano bench and downed it in one swallow. Then he picked up the photograph. "Why?" he whispered to the picture. His voice was broken, unrecognizable. "Why did you have to be so stupid, Camilla? Why did you choose him?" Cassidy's breath hitched. Choose him? Did he mean Noah? She took a step back, intending to flee, but her foot landed on a loose floorboard. Creak. The sound was like a gunshot in the silence. Ethan spun around, his reflexes instant. "Who's there?" Cassidy froze. There was no point in hiding. She pushed the door open slowly, holding her water glass like a shield. "I'm sorry," she stammered. "I heard music. I didn't know." Ethan stared at her. The vulnerability she had seen a moment ago vanished, replaced instantly by a wall of fury. He marched toward her, the glass still in his hand. "I told you," he snarled, his voice low and shaking with rage. "I told you this wing was forbidden." "I was just getting water," Cassidy said, backing away until her back hit the hallway wall. "You play beautifully. I just—" "Get out," Ethan interrupted. He was inches from her now. She could smell the whiskey on his breath and something else, cologne and rain. "You have no right to be here. You have no right to see this." "See what?" Cassidy asked, her fear giving way to a sudden realization. "See that you're human. That you miss your wife?" Ethan flinched as if she had slapped him. He slammed his hand against the wall beside her head, trapping her. "Do not speak about her," he hissed. "You don't know anything. You think you can come in here with your cheap sympathy and fix us? You think because you got Noah to eat a sandwich that you understand this family?" "I understand pain," Cassidy whispered, looking up into his furious eyes. "And I know that blaming a 6-year-old boy for a tragedy isn't going to bring her back." The air between them crackled. Ethan looked like he wanted to strangle her, or maybe kiss her. The intensity was overwhelming. "He killed her," Ethan whispered, the confession tearing out of him. "She died because of him." "No," Cassidy said firmly. "She died. It was an accident. Noah is a child. He isn't a curse, Ethan. He's the only piece of her you have left." Ethan stared at her, his chest heaving. For a long moment, the only sound was the rain hammering against the roof. He looked at her mouth, then her eyes, searching for deceit. Slowly, he pulled his hand back. The anger drained out of him, leaving him looking exhausted and hollow. "Go to bed, Miss Brooks," he said, turning away from her. "If I find you in this wing again, you will be terminated immediately. Do you understand?" "Yes," Cassidy whispered. She turned and ran back down the hallway, her heart pounding against her ribs. She didn't look back. Back in her room, Cassidy locked the door and leaned against it, trembling. She finally understood. Ethan didn't hate Noah. He was terrified of loving him. He looked at his son and saw the reason his wife was dead. "He killed her," Ethan had said. Cassidy slid down to the floor, hugging her knees. The job was no longer just about the money. She was in the middle of a war zone, and Noah was the casualty. She had to protect that boy. And to do that, she realized with a sinking feeling, she would have to heal his father. But Ethan Caldwell didn't want to be healed. He wanted to bleed, and anyone who got too close was going to drown in it. 3 weeks bled into a month. The atmosphere in the Caldwell estate shifted, subtle as a change in barometric pressure. Noah was no longer the ghost haunting the hallways. He was a boy. He chased Cassidy through the gardens, his laughter echoing off the cold stone walls. He ate oatmeal with blueberries, drawing smiley faces in the bowl with syrup. But the most significant change was in Ethan. He was still cold, still distant, but he was watching. Cassidy would catch him standing on the balcony of his study, looking down at the garden where she and Noah were playing soccer. He would linger in the doorway of the nursery for a few seconds longer than necessary after saying goodnight. The explosive anger that had defined their first meeting had been replaced by a brooding intensity. Then came the invitation. It was a Tuesday morning. Cassidy was in the kitchen, helping Mrs. Higgins snap green beans, a task the housekeeper had grudgingly allowed her to do after Cassidy fixed the dishwasher without calling a repairman. Ethan walked in. The kitchen staff froze. He rarely entered the service areas. He was wearing a navy Brioni suit, his phone pressed to his ear. He hung up as he approached the island. "Mrs. Higgins," he said, acknowledging the housekeeper, then turned his gaze to Cassidy. "I need a word." Cassidy wiped her hands on a towel. "Did Noah break something?" "No," Ethan said. "The Caldwell Foundation Charity Gala is this Saturday. It's being held at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel. The board expects me to make an appearance. More importantly, they expect to see a stable, family-oriented CEO." "Okay," Cassidy said slowly. "So you're taking Noah?" "Noah refuses to go," Ethan said, a flicker of frustration crossing his face. "He had a panic attack when I mentioned the suit. He says he won't step foot outside this house unless—" He paused, looking like the words tasted like vinegar. "Unless Cass comes too." Cassidy blinked. "Me?" Mr. Caldwell, I'm a waitress. I don't do galas. I don't even own a dress that doesn't have a ketchup stain on it." "I am aware of your wardrobe limitations," Ethan said dryly. "The stylist will arrive at 2:15 p.m. You will attend as Noah's companion. Your job is to keep him quiet and keep him calm. Do not speak to the press. Do not drink the champagne. And for God's sake, do not tell anyone you work at a diner." "So I'm supposed to lie?" "You are supposed to omit," Ethan corrected. "Be ready at 6:00 p.m. Saturday." He turned on his heel and left. Saturday arrived with a flurry of activity. The stylist, a frantic French woman named Odette, descended upon Cassidy with racks of silk and chiffon. Cassidy felt like a doll being poked and prodded. When she finally looked in the full-length mirror, her breath hitched. The dress was a midnight blue velvet that hugged her curves and pooled at her feet. It was modest but stunning, the color bringing out the blue in her eyes. Her blonde hair was swept up in an elegant chignon, exposing the curve of her neck. "You clean up well, kid," Mrs. Higgins grunted from the doorway. It was the closest thing to a compliment the woman had ever given her. Noah was waiting in the foyer, looking adorable in a miniature tuxedo. When he saw Cassidy, his jaw dropped. "You look like a princess." "And you look like James Bond," Cassidy grinned, straightening his bow tie. The sound of footsteps on the marble stairs made them both look up. Ethan was descending. He stopped halfway down. His eyes locked onto Cassidy. He didn't move. He didn't speak. His gaze traveled from her hair to the hem of her dress, then back up to her eyes. For a moment, the mask slipped. He looked struck. Not angry, not indifferent. Struck. "Daddy, doesn't Cass look pretty?" Noah chirped. Ethan cleared his throat, adjusting his cufflinks as he resumed his descent. "She looks appropriate. The car is waiting." The gala was a sensory overload. The ballroom of the Fairmont was dripping in crystals and gold. A live orchestra played waltzes, while Seattle's elite mingled, holding flutes of Dom Perignon. Cassidy stuck to Noah like glue. They found a quiet corner near the chocolate fountain. Noah was fascinated by the cascading cocoa, and Cassidy was just trying to breathe. Well, well, if it isn't the recluse. Cassidy stiffened. A woman was approaching them. She was tall, statuesque, with hair the color of polished raven wings and a red dress that was cut dangerously low. She looked at Ethan, who had just walked over to check on them, with a predatory smile. "Charlotte," Ethan said, his voice dropping to absolute zero. "Charlotte Kensington." Cassidy recognized the name. Her father owned the largest shipping company on the West Coast. The tabloids had tried to link her and Ethan for years. "I didn't think you'd show up, Ethan," Charlotte purred, placing a hand on his arm. "And you brought the baggage." She looked down at Noah with a sneer disguised as a smile. Noah shrank behind Cassidy's skirt. "And who is this?" Charlotte asked, turning her sharp eyes on Cassidy. "I don't recognize you. Are you new money, or just hired help?" Cassidy felt the heat rise in her cheeks. She opened her mouth to speak, but Ethan beat her to it. "This is Cassidy," Ethan said firmly, stepping between Charlotte and Cassidy. "She is with me." He didn't say she was the nanny. He didn't say she was staff. He said, "She is with me." Charlotte's smile faltered. "Oh, I didn't realize you were dating. How quaint." "We are discussing the Foundation's new literacy initiative," Ethan lied smoothly. "If you'll excuse us, Charlotte, the music is starting." He took Cassidy's hand. His palm was warm, his grip strong. "Dance with me." "What?" Cassidy whispered, panic flaring. "Mr. Caldwell, I can't dance. And Noah is eating a strawberry," Ethan said, glancing at his son, who was happily occupied. And we need to get away from Charlotte before I say something that tanks my stock price. Just follow my lead." He pulled her onto the dance floor. Cassidy felt clumsy and small, but Ethan moved with effortless grace. He pulled her close, his hand resting on the small of her back, sending shivers up her spine. The orchestra played a slow, sweeping melody. "You're trembling," Ethan murmured, his face inches from hers. "I'm terrified," Cassidy admitted, looking up at him. "Everyone is staring. They know I don't belong here." "Let them stare," Ethan said, his voice rough. "You shine brighter than anyone in this room, Cassidy." Cassidy's heart hammered against her ribs. She searched his eyes. The steel was gone. There was only heat. "Ethan," she whispered, using his first name for the first time. He leaned in. The world around them, the music, the chatter, the flashing cameras, faded away. He was going to kiss her. She knew it. And God help her, she wanted him to. "Ethan!" The spell shattered. A man in a grey suit tapped Ethan on the shoulder. "Sorry to interrupt, but the board chairman needs you for the toast." Ethan pulled back, blinking as if waking from a trance. He looked at Cassidy, his pupils blown wide. He looked terrified of what he had almost done. "I have to go," he stammered. He released her abruptly and walked away, leaving Cassidy standing alone in the middle of the dance floor, her skin still burning from his touch. She didn't know it then, but across the room, Charlotte Kensington was watching, and she was holding her phone, typing a message to a contact at the Seattle Inquirer. The crash came the next morning. Cassidy woke up feeling lighter than air. The memory of the dance, of Ethan's hand on her waist, played on a loop in her mind. She hummed as she went downstairs to the kitchen to make coffee. The house was silent. Too silent. When she entered the kitchen, Mrs. Higgins was standing by the counter, holding a tablet. She looked up at Cassidy with an expression of pity mixed with disappointment. "Mr. Caldwell wants to see you in the study," Mrs. Higgins said softly. "Now." Cassidy's stomach dropped. "Is Noah okay?" "Noah is fine. Go." Cassidy walked to the study, her bare feet making no sound on the wood. The door was open. Ethan was standing by the window, his back to her. The morning light filtered in, but the room felt cold as a tomb. "You wanted to see me?" Cassidy asked. Ethan turned slowly. His face was a mask of stone. The warmth from the night before was gone, replaced by a glacial fury that was far worse than his shouting. He walked to his desk and picked up a newspaper. He threw it across the room. It landed at Cassidy's feet. "The Billionaire's Bargain." How a destitute waitress conned her way into the Caldwell estate. Cassidy gasped, picking up the paper. There was a photo of her, a grainy shot taken from outside Jerry's diner weeks ago, looking tired and worn. And next to it, a photo of her dancing with Ethan last night. The article was vicious. It detailed her mother's debts, her foreclosure notice, and her dropout status from community college. It claimed she had targeted Ethan, using his damaged son as a way to get a payout. It even quoted an anonymous source, saying Cassidy had bragged about landing a whale. "Ethan, this isn't true," Cassidy said, her voice shaking. "I never—" "Stop," Ethan commanded. He walked around the desk, holding up a piece of paper. It was a bank transfer record. "This morning, a deposit of $50,000 was made into your mother's account. The source is a shell company owned by the same media group that owns this trash rag." Cassidy's eyes went wide. "What? No, I didn't authorize that. I don't know where that money came from." "Don't you?" Ethan's voice rose, cracking with betrayal. "You played me perfectly, Cassidy. The concerned angel, the wolf stories. You made my son love you. You made me." He stopped, swallowing hard. You made me trust you. And all the while, you were negotiating your exclusives." "I didn't," Cassidy cried, tears streaming down her face. "Someone is setting me up. Ethan, look at me. I care about Noah. I care about you." "You care about the $10,000 a week," Ethan spat. "And now you've got your bonus." He walked over to the door and opened it wide. "Get out," he said. "Ethan, please, get out," he roared, the sound shaking the walls. "Pack your things. The driver will take you to the city. If you ever come near my son again, I will bury you in legal fees until you rot." Cassidy looked at him, seeing the utter devastation in his eyes. He wasn't just angry. He was hurt. He had finally opened the door to his fortress, and he believed she had let the enemy in. She knew there was no point in arguing. "Not now." "You're making a mistake," she whispered. She placed the newspaper on the table. "I loved him. I really loved him." She ran out of the room. She didn't pack her clothes. She grabbed her backpack, ran past a confused Mrs. Higgins, and out the front door. She began walking down the long, winding driveway in the rain. Inside the house, the storm was just beginning. Ethan poured himself a drink, his hands shaking. He felt sick. He felt like he had just cut off his own limb. He looked at the bank transfer record again. It was damning. Why else would the money be there? "Daddy!" Ethan spun around. Noah was standing in the doorway of the study. He was holding his stuffed wolf. "Where is Cass?" Noah asked. "She's not in her room." Ethan put the glass down. He had to do this. He had to be the parent. "Cass is gone, Noah. She had to leave." "Why?" Noah's lip trembled. "Because she wasn't who we thought she was," Ethan said, trying to keep his voice steady. "She had to go back to her own life." "Did you make her leave?" Noah asked, his voice rising in panic. "It's for the best," Ethan said, stepping forward. "No!" Noah screamed. It was a primal sound. "You ruin everything. You made Mummy go away, and now you made Cass go away. I hate you." "Noah!" Ethan snapped. But Noah turned and ran. He didn't run to his room. He ran toward the back patio doors. "Noah, come back here!" Ethan yelled, chasing after him. Noah fumbled with the lock, got the door open, and sprinted out into the garden. The rain was coming down in sheets now, a true Seattle squall. Ethan ran outside, the rain instantly soaking his shirt. "Noah!" The boy was fast. He scrambled over the low stone wall that separated the manicured garden from the dense forest that bordered the estate. "Noah, stop! It's dangerous!" Ethan vaulted the wall, but the boy had vanished into the tree line. The forest was dark, thick with ferns and ancient pines. Ethan ran blindly, pushing branches out of his face. "Noah! Noah!" Panic, cold and absolute, gripped his heart. This wasn't a game. The woods dropped off into a ravine a mile north. There were coyotes. He searched for 20 minutes, his voice hoarse from screaming. He found a small shoe stuck in the mud. Noah's sneaker. Ethan fell to his knees, clutching the muddy shoe. The silence of the forest was deafening. He was alone. He was the billionaire who could buy anything, but he couldn't buy his son's safety. He pulled his phone from his pocket with trembling fingers. He didn't call the police. He didn't call his security team. He dialed the only person Noah would listen to. Cassidy was sitting on a bench at a bus stop, 2 miles down the road, shivering, hugging her backpack. She was crying so hard she couldn't see the road. Her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Mr. Caldwell. She almost didn't answer. She almost threw the phone into a puddle. But she thought of Noah. She slid the bar. "What do you want? Haven't you done enough?" "He's gone." Ethan's voice came through, ragged and broken. He sounded like he was weeping. "Cassidy, he ran into the woods. I found his shoe. I can't find him. I can't find him." Cassidy's blood turned to ice. She stood up, ignoring the rain. "Where are you?" she demanded, her voice shifting instantly from victim to protector. "The North Woods, near the ravine. Please, he listens to you. Help me." "Stay where you are," Cassidy ordered. "I'm coming back." She hung up and looked down the empty road. No bus, no taxi. She tightened her backpack straps and started running back toward the gates of the fortress she had just been exiled from. She ran not for the money, not for the man who had broken her heart, but for the boy who believed in wolves. The forest was a living nightmare, the rain turning the earth into a slurry of mud. Cassidy found Ethan near the edge of the ravine, a place where the ground dropped 50 feet into a rocky creek bed. The billionaire, usually so composed, was on his knees, clawing at the underbrush. "Cassidy," he choked out, seeing her emerge from the gloom. "The tracks, they stop here. I can't find him." Cassidy looked at the cliff edge, terror gripping her heart. But then she looked at the hollowed-out cedar trees to their left. She forced herself to think like Noah. "He's a wolf. Wolves don't fall. They hide." She turned to the trees and cupped her hands around her mouth. "Scout, it's me! The storm is too loud, Scout! We need to go home!" Ethan watched her, breathless. "Noah, please!" "Shh!" Cassidy hissed. "Scout, the Alpha is sorry. Come out, Scout!" A rustle came from the base of a massive cedar. Deep inside a hollow beneath the roots, two terrified eyes reflected the beam of Ethan's flashlight. "Daddy," a tiny voice whispered. Ethan let out a sob that sounded like a gunshot. He scrambled through the mud, pulling his son from the hole and crushing him against his chest. "I've got you. I'm so sorry, Noah." Cassidy watched them, her heart aching. They were safe. Her job was done. She turned to leave, but Noah screamed, "Cass, wait!" Ethan stood up, lifting Noah, and grabbed Cassidy's arm. "Where are you going?" "I'm going home," she yelled over the wind. "I'm fired, remember?" "Get in the car," Ethan roared, his eyes blazing, not with anger, but with desperation. "You came back for him even after I humiliated you. No one has ever done that. Please." Back at the estate, the atmosphere had shifted. Once Noah was warm and asleep, refusing to let go of Cassidy's hand until his eyes closed, Cassidy stepped into the hallway. Ethan was waiting. He led her to his study and handed her a tablet. "I fired my head of security. I had a forensic accountant trace the deposit in your mother's account." Cassidy stiffened. "I told you." "I know," Ethan interrupted softly. "The digital signature belonged to a private server at Kensington Shipping." "Charlotte," Cassidy whispered. "She engineered the whole thing," Ethan said, his voice vibrating with regret. "She thought if she destroyed you, I would come running back to her business deal. I pride myself on seeing everything, Cassidy, but I didn't see the truth standing right in front of me." He stepped closer, stripping away his armor. "I accused you of betrayal, and yet you ran into the storm to save my son. You saved his life, and you saved mine. Please forgive me." Cassidy looked into his steel-gray eyes and saw the lonely man beneath. "You're an idiot," she whispered, tears pooling in her eyes. "I am," Ethan admitted, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "Don't leave. I can't be in this house without the light you bring." "I can't be just a nanny, Ethan," she said. "Then don't be," he whispered, leaning in. "Be my partner." He kissed her, and it tasted like rain, brandy, and second chances. 6 months later. The headlines had changed. The scandal was forgotten, replaced by photos of the new Caldwell Literacy Initiative, led by Cassidy Brooks. Charlotte Kensington had been quietly removed from the board, her family's company buried in tax audits. In the garden of the estate, the sun was shining. Noah was running across the grass, kicking a soccer ball, "Watch this, Mum!" he yelled. Ethan walked up behind Cassidy as she sat on the patio bench. "He's happy," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We're all happy," Cassidy smiled. "I was thinking about our contract," Ethan mused. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "I think we need new terms. Lifetime commitment, mandatory bedtime stories, and this." He opened the box to reveal a stunning sapphire ring. "It's not a payment," Ethan said softly. "It's a promise. Will you marry me, Cassidy?" Cassidy looked at the ring, then at the man who had once been a beast in a glass castle. "I accept the terms," she smiled. As they kissed her, Noah ran past them, howling like a little wolf at the moon. The waitress from Jerry's diner had found her own story, and this one had a happily ever after. So that is the story of Cassidy and the billionaire beast. It wasn't magic that saved them. It was the courage of a woman who answered a call in the dark when everyone else would have hung up. It reminds us that sometimes the richest people in the world are the poorest in spirit, until someone brave enough comes along to show them the wealth of kindness. Cassidy didn't just save a boy, she broke a generational curse of coldness and fear. What do you think? Would you have forgiven Ethan after he kicked her out, or would you have left him in the rain? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of emotion, please smash that like button, share this story with a friend who needs a little hope, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. Until next time, keep listening.